Hey, hello everyone. I am glad to welcome you to the world of Blenderizm. In this episode want to show you how to make a vector in SVG format from JPG format, and from it a 3D model. This is a very cool method, I really liked it. The thing is that with the help of all you can restore old drawings, you can improve the quality of existing drawings, and the most interesting thing is that all this needs to be done simply in Photoshop. And you do not need any additional programs for vectors. And so we go to Edit, Settings, Export. Here we need to check the box next to use the previous version, Export As. I click OK. And now if we go to File, Export, Export As, then we have the ability to save in SVG format. And so we open the image of the Viking symbol that I want to place on my model. Now I press Ctrl J to duplicate the layer. This way you can always go back to the beginning. And I press Ctrl I to invert the colors in the image. I do this so that you need to remember one basic rule: everything that is black will be a vector. Now we go to Image, Image Size. Here we need to increase the number of pixels from 72 to 150. So that there is something to work with. Now we go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Here we set literally a few pixels for blurring in order to literally visually blur the angularity a little. Add a curves adjustment layer. And we need to adjust the black and white sliders so that our images are as similar to vector as possible, so that the black color connects in the right places. There is no single recipe or rule here, you need to adjust your drawing by eye. So do not rush and do not try different settings. And no one forbids us to use a brush, we can both finish drawing some parts and delete what we do not need or make it more beautiful. That is, with such manipulations we bring the image to the state so that it is as clear as possible, and in any way convenient for you we select the black color. Then with the selected tool, the selection lasso, press the right mouse button, and select to form a working contour. Here you need to set the tolerance, usually from 0.5 to 1. Now we right-click on the pen tool and select the Content-Aware Tracing tool, and we just have to click on the Shape button. Now we have a new layer. And we need to save it as an SVG file. So we go to File, Export, Export As. We select SVG, we select the path and save. This was a complex element, now I need a simpler one. This detail will go around the shield, along the edge. And so we need to create a new window in which I will work. Then we select the square selection tool and copy the image to a white background, let's call them teeth. Using the magic selection tool, we select everything yellow. And we press the Ctrl J combination, with its help we create a new layer. We select our teeth and fill them with black, the Alt backspace combination. Now we can see that there are white gaps in the teeth, they need to be painted over. Press the B button, this is a quick access to the brush, select black and paint over. Now if you notice that there are very uneven points on the teeth, blurring will help us remove them, so go to Filters, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Select 1 or 2 pixels. Now add a curves adjustment layer, using the black and white slider, make the image clear. After which I noticed that it would be nice to draw some more points using the black brush tool. Okay, select the magic selection tool, select the black color. Take the selection lasso tool, my right mouse button, and select create a working path. Check what we got, and now we can use the content aware tracing tool. After we have selected it, click on the button at the top called figure. We have a new layer that we save in SVG format. This is a vector format. Well, we have prepared our objects well, now we transfer them to Blender, whoosh. Now let's start modeling. First, we need to make the inner part of the shield, which consists of boards. To do this, we add a cube. We will make a board from it. And we will multiply it. For ease of work, we will add an edge loop in the center and delete half of the board. In the future, we will apply the mirror modifier to save time when modeling. In the meantime, we use the array modifier with a constant offset along the z-axis. We adjust the offset so that we have a small gap between adjacent boards. And we increase the number of boards to 5. You may notice that there are no side faces because we simply do not need them. And so we can apply the array modifier, then delete the top and bottom faces. So now we can apply the mirror modifier about the y-axis. And then I apply the bevel modifier, set the number of segments to 2, and set the amount to 0.01. Now press Ctrl 1, which means that we apply the subdivision surface with the subdivision once. Now, since in the future we will give all the parts of the build the shape of a lens, bend them. For this, all the elements must have a sufficient number of edges, that is, we need to add vertical edges. We will do this with the knife tool, but when we use it, we press the C button to cut through. When we are done with this, then we press the right mouse button and convert to mesh. The next element that we create is the circle mesh. We need it in order to perform a Boolean operation. And so we add it to the scene, unfold it along the x-axis and reduce it in size, so that it fits inside the boards. Then we go into edit mode, select all the vertices and press the combination E+C and drag the mouse to the side. Then we select everything using the A button and extrude along the y-axis. First select the boards, and then the object that we created and press Ctrl-, this means quick access to the operation. We convert the boards to a mesh and delete the grid. After that, I added another subdivision. Now we add a circle mesh and will make the outline part of the shield. Rotate 90 degrees and adjust the size. Then in edit mode we extrude the vertices. Now we use the A button to select all the vertices and extrude them again. If you set the origin point in the center of the geometry, then using the Shift-S keys you can move the object to the 3D cursor. Thus, set it precisely in the center. We use the quick key combination Ctrl-2 and add subdivision. Now in edit mode you can add an edge loop for a more stable topology. And you also need to add a bevel modifier, set it in first place before subdivision. We set the number of segments to 2, and the amount we set to 0.025. And now we can move on to our SVG files. To add them, go to File, Import, and select the SVG extension, which means Scalable Vector Graphics. A big plus of using them is that they can be resized without losing quality. After we have added them to the scene, we need to set the origin point in the center of the geometry, since by default it is in the center of the scene. Now we go to the curve settings, and in the geometry tab we find the extrude setting and set it to 0.004. In order not to bother with creating a round curve, we can simply go to the account contour editing mode, with the Alt pressed, select the edge loop, which is very similar in size, copy it and separate it from the part. Now we have the ability to convert it to a curve. Now we add an array modifier to the teeth. We put a tick next to the constant offset. We also need to use the curve modifier. But when we added it, we see that we need to rotate the teeth 90 degrees along the x-axis. We adjust the curve in diameter a little. After that, we can set the required number of teeth and adjust their size. Now we can add to the scene what I call the Viking Drakar logo. We set its origin point in the center to make it easier to work with. We rotate it and install it in its place. Now it also needs to be given a small thickness. Extrude we set to 0.01, and depth we set to 0.0005. To be honest, when I was doing this tutorial, I missed this moment to set depth on the teeth. But that's okay. Just don't miss this moment. Now we need to prepare the elements of our shield for moving in Substance Painter. Or rather, we need to make a UV map. To do this, convert the Drakar logo to a mesh. Go to Edit mode and press 3 on the numpad to enable side view. We need this to select all the edges on the back of the logo and mark them as a seam. Don't forget to enable transparency mode with the Alt-Z combination. Now press 1 on the numpad to switch to the front view. Select everything with the A key. And press U to get quick access to the menu, where we select Project from View. Now we move on to the round contour part of the shield. Go into Edit mode, and with Alt and Shift pressed, select the edge loops on the back of the object, which we mark as a seam. Then select everything with the A button and make a UV map by pressing the U button and select Unwrap. Now we can move on to the boards inside the shield. Go into Edit mode and with Alt and Shift pressed, select the edges on the edge of the boards. This of course takes a couple of minutes, or you can come up with your own way to select them. Well, after we have selected them, we mark them as a seam. We select all the faces, press 1 to go to the front view. We use the U key to get quick access to the UV map menu, and select Project from View. Now we just have to carry out the procedure we already know with the teeth. Tab to go to Edit mode, 3 to go to the side view, Alt-Z to turn on transparency mode, select all the back edges, mark them as a seam, press the A button to select everything, 1 on the numpad to go to the front view, press the U button, where in the menu we select Project from View. In the end, after all this, do not forget to apply the scale and rotation. Now we can start bending the shield elements or giving them the shape of a lens. let's start working with the boards. The first step is to add empty to the scene relative to which the bending will be made. Add and move it a little to the side. Let's go to the modifiers, deformation, cast. Disable the effect relative to the X and Z axes, and select empty as an object. With the shield outline we do the same, add the cast modifier. Disable the effect relative to the X and Z axes, and select empty as an object. And now, as we can see, due to the fact that the objects have bent, one of them needs to be moved a little. Okay, good, that's better. Now, in order to return everything that is hidden to the scene, press the Alt-H combination. Add the cast modifier to the teeth, disable the effect relative to the X and Z axes, and select empty as an object. And move it along the Y axis to match the shield outline. And all that's left is to bend the logo with the Drakar. Add the cast modifier, and in the same way turn off the effect relative to the X and Z axes, and as an object, select empty. We just need to move it a little along the Y axis so that the logo with the Drakar is attached to the boards. Now if you look closer, the logo is not very close. This can be easily fixed. With the Shift key pressed, we move the factor indicator a little, and so it's much better, right? Now we select all four elements and convert them to mesh, thus applying all the modifiers at the same time. Empty. Now we don't need it, we can delete it. At this stage, the modeling is complete for now. Let's move on to the materials. Let's switch to the materials view mode in the viewport. Let's select the shield outline and create a new material for it. On it, on the dot near base color. And select the image texture. Click on the new one. And since I want the texture to be of high quality, we create 4000 by 4000 pixels. Blank we change to UV grid OK, and we get a texture similar to a chessboard. We can assign this material to the rest of the shield elements.
We need to do this in order to align the scale of the UV map for different elements. Since if you look closely, the scale on the logo with the Drakar is clearly smaller than that of the other elements.
In this case, I will do it manually since it is not difficult and there are not enough details. Select the shield outline, and in the window with the UV editor I go to UV and find Pack Islands there. Now the teeth, go to edit mode, select everything and increase the UV map using the S button on the keyboard. The next logo is the Drakar. You need to do the same thing, stretch the UV map using the S button on the keyboard. Well, this is much better. And now you can see what the texel density add-on looks like, with which you can do this in semi-automatic mode. I show how to do this in the previous lesson with the Viking axe. If you are interested, you can look at it in more detail. And now for more convenient work in the Substance Painter, for each of the elements of the shield, you need to assign your own material, and rename them. Another thing to do before exporting is to make sure that the normals on our parts are in the correct position. To do this, go to the Viewport Overlays tab and check the box next to Face Orientation. And we see that the outline is red. Go to its editing mode, press Alt-N and select Flip. Great, then when each of our materials has its own separate material, we can export the shield model to FBX format. Whoosh, and now we are in Substance Painter. First of all, we need to import the file with our 3D model. Select the resolution of the project we will work on. I choose 4.000 because I want us to have a beautiful picture. It is possible and more, but this should be enough. Select the file on the disk and click OK. Now that the model has loaded, we look to make sure that everything is fine with its elements. And the first thing we need is to bake the textures. There is an icon with a croissant at the top, click on it. Here we check that 4.000 pixels are also set, check the box opposite to use low poly mesh as high polygon. And for the anti-aliasing construction, set it to supersampling 4x. Here we see what textures we will bake and you can click on Bake Selected Textures. This is what the baking and texture process looks like. Of course, I sped it up a little so as not to wait too long. The process took me about a minute and a half. Now we can go back into the scene and start applying textures. I will use Smart Materials. Smart Materials are presets for a whole layer stack. You should see them as a folder with a few layers which has been saved and can be reused elsewhere. A correctly made smart material contains effects and layers that work on every mesh, with baked maps, such as generators and filters. Smart Materials can be added in two ways. Drag and drop a smart material from the shelf into your layer stack. Or click the Add a Smart Material button, then pick one in the mini shelf that appears. At the moment I haven't downloaded any additional materials in Substance Painter, I only use the ones that were originally. In the search bar we write the word metal and I find which will be suitable for me. It is called Steel Rust Surface. I specifically chose a damaged material, as I want to convey the mood and appearance of weapons that have been in battles. If you think that a shield is not a weapon, then you have not yet been hit with a shield. Ha ha ha. And the teeth and the logo with the image of a Drakar I want to paint in gold. And so I write the word gold in the search bar and I get two options and I choose damaged gold. In order to use it, I just need to drag it to the element that I want to paint. And now, when our Viking shield looks like this, I notice that it is too clean. I would like to give it a worn look, or rather add dirt in places where it usually collects. Therefore, at the top right, select the wood material. Add a new layer on top of the wood material. Add a black mask. Add a generator. Generator lists, select dirt. Initially, the program selects gray, but this suits me for now. It is more visible where the dirt is located. It is worth noting that we have the ability to adjust the saturation of dirt, the contrast of dirt, and other. We do all this by eye. When the settings are ready, you need to select the color of the dirt. Click on the gray color. We have to choose the color palette that suits us. As I imagine, the dirt should be dark brown. And when the color changed, it seemed to me that it would be appropriate to set the grunge amount to 0.4. And in this way you can add scratches, abrasions, damage. Substance Painter has a whole list of textures. And so, it looks much better. Great, I like it. Here we are done, we just need to export textures. Go to File, Export Textures. Here we need to set several settings. Select path where the file will be saved. Output template we set to Blender Principle BSDF. File type we set as JPG. Size we set to 4096 and push export. texture export looks like this. You need to wait about 10 seconds, and whoosh, and we are back in Blender. Now we need to connect the textures that we just created. It's incredibly simple. Point the cursor at Principal BSDF and press the key combination Ctrl-Shift-T. With its help we have the ability to connect several image textures at once, and the bonus is that the Blender program does all this instead of us. We just need to specify what to connect. In this way we connect the textures to 4 elements of our shield model. So when our model is ready, and the textures are installed on it, then I want to quickly tell you what techniques I use to create the scene. Let's start with lighting. This is most likely my first scene in which I used only one source of lighting. This is an HDRI map. In the process I tried to combine it with a sky texture, but it turned out so when I connected a mix shader to combine them, I accidentally found what I needed. The only thing is that I set the lighting strength to 3. As a result, I used one HDRI map White Cliff Top which I downloaded into the Blender kit. If you need it, you can click on this icon and download it to your project location. I also used my asset library. I have several versions of them. I mainly use them for plants, as in this case. I needed it to select the vegetation on Earth. As far as I know, only grass grows on cliffs and in the steppes, so I chose a small grass bush. I also took the stone that is behind the shield from the asset library. The trick is that I multiplied the grass using a particle system switched to hair. First, you need to select the vertices that I will use to multiply the grass bush. I did this using the checker deselect tool. And assigned a vertex group, which I subsequently specified in the particle system in the length line. In the render tab we set render as object and select our grass. You also need to adjust the scale and its randomness. In the source tab we need to change from face to vertices. And also it seemed to me that it would be appropriate if the shield was resting on a sword stuck in the ground. I did not model it, I also just downloaded it from Blender Kit. This is King Arthur's sword. One thing I want to show you is the plane that hangs in the air. The thing is that the sun is shining from the HDRI map on that side and it gives a very strong glare. And I decided to fence it with a flag like on real shoots. But not a simple one, but a half-transparent one. These are the settings I used in the shader. Also at the moment you can SE render that I use. Personally I like color management in Blender 4.2, there is a new one called Chronos. So that's all, learn hotkeys, they will make your life easier. Take your time, try different settings, and pray for Ukraine. Thank you, bye.